Good afternoon, everyone. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 of the United States Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. The Trump administration undertook an offensive military strike in the Middle East and chose to ignore the constitutional requirement to get approval from the United States Congress. The American people deserve to know the facts and the truth as it related to the decision to strike Iran without securing congressional approval. What was the imminent nature of the threat to the safety and security of the American people that justified the strike that took place? What was the result of the military strike in terms of potentially setting back the Iranian nuclear program and their aspirations? We agree that Iran should never be permitted to become nuclear capable. Iran is a sworn enemy of the United States of America and a sworn enemy of our allies, including Israel and Jordan. But there are real questions that need to be answered so that the American people have a full understanding of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is it in fact the case that Iran's nuclear program has been completely and totally obliterated? There apparently are reasons to believe that that was a blatant misrepresentation made by Donald Trump to the American people. That's one of the questions that needs to be answered by the Trump administration. What are they running away from? Why was this briefing, which is already days late, postponed? Why is the Trump administration playing political games on questions of war and peace that relate directly to the safety and security of the American people? We're ready to undertake our constitutional responsibility on behalf of the American people on these serious issues, which include the need to get an answer to the question as to what is Donald Trump's plan to avoid another costly and deadly war in the Middle East, which the American people want no part of. Democrats, independents, and Republicans. It's now my honor to yield to our distinguished whip, Catherine Clark.
Thank you so much, Mr. Leader, and we are grateful for your leadership in this time. The Constitution is not a suggestion. Congress is not here for show. Our democratic institutions exist because there are no kings in our country. No one person has the right to declare war. That power belongs to the people through their representatives. And yet, days after this unauthorized, unconstitutional military strike, the American people still don't know what happened. That is why having this briefing so late as it was be postponed even further is so critical. And I think we have to put it in the context of everything that is going on in Congress this week. As we have an administration that won't come forward and talk truthfully and honestly about matters of national security and potentially taking us into another war in the Middle East. We also are at the same time debating and on the verge of having the GOP pass Donald Trump's big, ugly bill, taking away the security of American people to hit that first rung of the American dream. 16 million people losing their health care, $500 billion out of Medicare, food taken away from or threatened by another 42 million people threatened with losing food programs in this country. What is this saying when the priority of this administration is to build a security, whether it is security abroad from aggressors or whether it is economic security and the security of knowing you can take your family to a doctor without plunging yourself into debt, and not giving the facts, not being level with the American people about why this strike was necessary and what they're doing to their economic lives with this big, ugly bill. All of this is up to this administration to come to Congress and level with the American people and tell them the who, what, where, why was necessary for this military action. The American people, our service members, and us as representatives and their voices here deserve answers. And now I am proud to turn it over to our chairman, Pete Aguilar.
Thank you, Whip Clark and Leader Jeffries, for your unwavering support of American men and women who put their lives on their line each and every day. Our primary concern is the safety of American troops and American interests in the region. And unfortunately, the administration's failure to inform and brief members of Congress is just completely unacceptable. We need answers, we need evidence, and we need them now. The chaos and the confusion that we are seeing in the White House is not the kind of leadership that we need. We need strong, steady leadership, and the president is proving incapable of that. The Trump administration owes it to the American people to provide transparency immediately. House Democrats will continue to pursue rigorous oversight of the Trump administration's foreign policy, guided by ranking members Meeks, Smith, and Himes, as well as the National Security Task Force. With that, back over to Leader Jeffries.
Questions?
Mr. Leader, you just said that the president's characterization that the program had been obliterated was a misrepresentation. What is your assessment?
No, I didn't say it was a misrepresentation. I said there have been no facts that have been presented to the American people or to the Congress to confirm that Iran's nuclear program has been completely and totally obliterated.
But would you not agree that the world is safer now than it was a month ago?
We have repeatedly made clear that the Iranian regime should never be permitted to become nuclear capable. One of the questions that the administration needs to answer is why did they abandon the aggressive diplomacy that was successful during the Obama administration, partnering with Great Britain, France, Germany, China, and Russia to reach an agreement with Iran that actually did set back Iran's nuclear ambitions? That's a question that needs to be answered by the administration, which is why it's perplexing that if the Trump administration really does believe they have the high ground, why are you hiding from the American people and their elected representatives in the United States Congress?
The Speaker, a few moments before you came out, said that the postponed briefing will now occur on Friday. Have you had a conversation about that with him? And also, you've said that you're looking for answers for the American people, but in a classified setting, how do you expect for the American people to fully understand what's happening behind closed doors?
Classified briefing is just the first step toward the transparency that will be required because of our concern for both the safety and security of our men and women in uniform, approximately 40,000 in the Middle East who are now in harm's way, and we need to know the justification for that, as well as understanding how this unilateral action, without following the constitutional requirement of congressional approval for an act of war makes the American people safer? These are questions that do need to be answered by the Trump administration, and the first step in that process is a classified briefing.
Did the speaker work with you to schedule that on Friday?
Speaker Johnson has been a good faith actor, in my view, on this issue because he recognizes, as a result of what Republican members of the House of Representatives had made clear, that the administration needs to answer questions on behalf of the American people.
What explanation were you given for the briefing being postponed, and are you concerned that the president will use this time to continue to get U.S. troops involved in the conflict without congressional approval?
We have not received any explanation from the Trump administration as to why the briefing was suddenly postponed.
And the second question?
There's real concern right now as it relates to the fragile situation in the Middle East, which is a tinderbox, which is why Congress, on behalf of the American people, needs to hear from the administration what was the justification for engaging in this act of war. What was the imminent threat to the safety and security of the American people that justified this strike without seeking congressional authorization? Pete, Catherine, you want to jump in? Thanks.
Have you guys received a Gang of Eight briefing yet? And are there any schedules coming up?
We have not received a Gang of Eight briefing, nor has one been scheduled. This is inexplicable. If the Trump administration actually believes that their actions were justified, what are they running away from? Why have they refused to provide a briefing to congressional leaders on both sides of the aisle and on both sides of the Capitol, including the top Democrats and Republicans on the Intelligence Committee? What is the administration hiding from the American people? At the highest levels of the White House, I made the request on Saturday for an immediate briefing of top congressional leaders and top leaders of the Intelligence Committee on a bipartisan basis, and they have refused to provide one.
Mr. Leader, the speaker seemed to indicate that part of the reason that you weren't briefed on the initial strike was because the administration couldn't get a hold of you.
Let's be clear. Let's be clear. There was no briefing that anyone received in advance of the unilateral strike ordered by Donald Trump. All four of us received a perfunctory, so-called courtesy call, providing notice that something was going to occur in the Middle East. That is not a briefing, and the administration clearly had no intention of providing a briefing.
Were they able to get you on the phone? Is that?
I did talk to multiple members of the White House on Saturday, but it was not in connection with providing any briefing. And as Leader Schumer indicated, when he spoke to the White House and asked the justification for the strike without seeking congressional authorization, the same question that I asked them, they could not provide an answer. Thanks. Go back to this side.
Going forward, what do you believe that the Congress and the administration should do working together, or maybe separately, to prevent another forever war in the Middle East?
Well, let me yield to both of my colleagues, and obviously there are several resolutions that have been introduced with respect to congressional authorization of the use of military force, which is the appropriate way to go. And those resolutions should be taken up and debated on the floor of the House of Representatives with full transparency for the American people, which is the constitutional way to protect the health, the safety, the national security, and the best interests of the American people.
Go back to what I said earlier. The Constitution isn't something that we use when it's convenient. And the way that it is designed, it has a role for Congress because we are the voices for American families. And yes, our initial briefings may be in classified settings, but it allows us to make a determination for the people who set us here is what is in our best national interests. And so, whether it is the briefings that did not occur with top leaders in Congress or this delay, we hope it will happen on Friday, but it's been asked for days, and we've been asking for information since the first bombs hit Iran with Israel back on June 12th. And so, what we have here is an administration that wants to just rule by fiat and their own desires. That is not how the Constitution works. And as members of Congress, it is our job and responsibility to assert that and to make sure that we have the information the American people are due.
I agree with everything that the whip and the leader mentioned. Whip Clark joined me and the vice chair and members of the Democratic Caucus National Security Task Force of 4 people who have served in uniform. And while I agree with the policy pieces of debating AUMFs and matters under this dome, I'd encourage you to talk to service members. Talk to service members who are also members of Congress here. There are colleagues of ours who have served combat tours, and they know what's at stake. And they are imploring us to ask the tough questions that might not have been asked 25 years ago, where there was one debate and one discussion, and we ended up losing thousands of American lives and $3 trillion spent in an endless war. That's why we're here. And so, yes, it's important what Democratic caucus and Democratic leadership feels, but we are a reflection of our membership, and our membership comes from all over this country, and many of them have served this country admirably, and they are asking us, they are imploring us to be policymakers and to ask these tough questions. That's why we're here. That's why we're being so forceful with this, is because it is so important that we get this right. It is so important that we prevent American men and women in service from dying. That's what this is about.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Leader. President Trump made the announcement of the strike on Truth Social. So much of the information that we're finding out is from his social media. Are you concerned that a Truth Social post or some sort of social media post could lead to unintended escalation? What are your thoughts about how the president is just conducting his outreach to the American people through his social media channels?
Yes, it's all extraordinary. Donald Trump stated on social media that 3 sites were hit. Were 3 sites hit? We don't know. That's why we need a briefing. Donald Trump suggested that there was a ceasefire, and then it no longer appeared that there was actually a ceasefire. That's why we need, on behalf of the American people, a congressional briefing. Donald Trump suggested that Iran's nuclear program had been completely and totally obliterated. Was that the case, or was that not the case? We don't know. The American people don't know. The American people deserve the truth, not Truth Social posts that are increasingly unhinged. The American people deserve to know the truth. And that process begins with a congressional briefing that flows from the constitutional responsibility that Congress has and has alone to declare war. The Constitution is not an inconvenience. George Washington, in his farewell address to Congress, and on this issue, George Washington is the OG, the original general, the original war hero, the original revolutionary, and then the first president. And in his farewell address to Congress, he said that the Constitution is sacredly obligatory upon all. That means everyone. That came from the OG, the original general. And Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 is very clear. On behalf of the American people, Congress, and Congress alone, has the responsibility of declaring war. And that is why the president needs to explain why he did not seek authorization for the use of military force.
I just wanted to ask you specifically for your reaction to new reporting that an early assessment by the Defense Intelligence Agency found that the strikes didn't destroy the core components of the nuclear program, likely only set it back by months. Just wondering if you've seen the reporting, if you plan to raise it with the administration.
It's one of the reasons why we need both a Gang of 8 briefing immediately and a classified briefing for all members of the House of Representatives. Thank you, everyone.